Welcome to our Nutrition Month webinar, What's for Dinner? Eating Well with Pulmonary Hypertension. I'd like to introduce Emily Campbell, who's our presenter today. Emily Campbell is a registered dietitian and certified diabetes educator with a Master of Science in Foods and Nutrition. Emily is the owner of Kidney Nutrition, where she supports those living with kidney disease, diabetes, and hypertension all over Canada through group and one-on-one nutrition support. Emily is involved with various local and national nephrology organizations, including being an invited speaker for various pharmaceutical companies, as well as various kidney foundations throughout Canada. She's a three-time cookbook author for those living with chronic kidney disease and co-chair of the Southwestern Ontario Canadian Association of Nephrology Dietitians. Emily's passionate about taking the complex world of nutrition and breaking it down to support others in finding foods that fit. So over to you, Emily.
Thank you so much, Robin. Thank you everyone for being here and participating in this Nutrition Month webinar. I always find when I hear people talk about me, I'm like, this is great. Everyone's going to think I'm older than I am sometimes, because I often get asked, oh, are you just in your 20s? I'm not. I'm much older than that. So sometimes this is a good thing for me. My name is Emily. As Robin mentioned, I am a registered dietitian and certified diabetes educator. I'm coming to you from my home just north of Toronto this evening, and I'm really excited to talk a bit about nutrition for pulmonary hypertension and sharing this simple spring roll and a dipping sauce recipe for the Pulmonary Heart Association cooking demonstration with you. What you can expect over the next 30 minutes or so is we're going to prepare this really nutritious and delicious recipe that focuses on foods that you can eat when you have pulmonary hypertension. And that's going to include our delicious homemade spring rolls and also 3 different dipping sauces that we'll make together. This is going to be great for lunchtime. You can prep it ahead. It's good for dinner, good for snacks. Really, it should be simple and easy for you. And I'll talk a bit about some strategies that you can use in your kitchen to make it easier for you as well. And then we'll also talk about some nutrition tips and tricks for pulmonary hypertension. So just as we get started, I would love to know if you are cooking along with me tonight, if you can just give me a thumbs up or a yes in the chat. That way I know to either speed up or slow down based on kind of your pace as well. And many people come and they don't cook along with me. They like to see the recipe done and then they do it at home, and that's really okay with me too. But right. So a healthy diet can have a huge impact in managing our pulmonary hypertension. And it's never too early to start learning about how nutrition can help. And it's never too late to get started. So one of the top things that we can do is to manage our sodium intake. And tonight we're going to talk a bit about some of the sauces that we have in our dips that you maybe thought you couldn't have when you have pulmonary hypertension, because they often have quite a bit of sodium in them. But I want to talk a little bit about our meals. So whenever we're thinking about our meals, whether that be breakfast, lunch, or dinner, we can really focus on our plate and what is in that meal. And ideally, to help manage our blood pressure, we want to make sure that half of that meal is in vegetables. There's a quarter of it in protein and a quarter of it in starches or carbohydrates. And then, of course, trying to make water our beverage of choice. So we'll kind of use these concepts as we go through the recipe and how that can apply tonight. But let's talk about the recipe and we'll see what we're using tonight. So for the simple spring rolls, we are going to use one of those bags of cabbage coleslaw mix, or just thinly sliced cabbage if you have that at home. So it's about those like Dole, President's Choice, any of those, that whole bag. We're going to use a cup of sliced bell pepper. Any color that you have in the fridge is great. It really just adds a bit of different nutrients because different vegetables have different vitamins in them for us. We want some cucumber, another cup, and then we're going to use some lettuce. It doesn't matter what kind of lettuce you have at home, whether that be romaine or iceberg, leaf lettuce, any of those, it's perfect. And then we are also going to use some fresh basil, and I also have a bit of mint here too as well. So traditionally in spring rolls, it's a bit of a Thai basil, which is a mix of basil and mint. So I just happened to pick some up, so we can use that as well. In our sauces, we need a few different ingredients. So the first we need is hoisin sauce. Hoisin sauce is often one of those big sodium sources that we can get concerned about. And if we take a look at the nutrition facts table, 1 tablespoon of hoisin has 23% of our daily sodium intake. But we're still going to use this, and I'll explain in just a minute why. We also need some water. We are going to need our lime juice. We have some sesame oil, fresh red pepper flakes for some spice, so completely optional. Tonight, we're going to use coconut aminos, which is a soy sauce substitute that's quite low in sodium. And then also have some peanut butter, honey, and then garlic and ginger. So hopefully you have all of that, as well as your rice paper rolls present as we get started to cook here. So the first thing that we want to do is to start with our dressings, I think, because that's where we're going to talk the most about from a sodium perspective. So of course, with pulmonary hypertension, too much sodium can increase our blood pressure. And following a low sodium diet can really help to reduce this. Often when we think about high sodium foods, we think of things that are packaged or processed or cured or have a lot of salt or seasonings in them. Things like bacon or deli meat or baked goods like breads or cakes or cookies, but also things like sauces and seasonings like ketchup or soy sauce, for example. So soy sauce traditionally has about 900 milligrams of sodium per tablespoon, whereas the coconut aminos, which is a soy sauce substitute, they actually only have 305 milligrams of sodium per tablespoon. And in our recipes tonight, you should get about 6 servings of dip per recipe. And the one that we're using, it has 1.5 tablespoons of coconut aminos. So about 500 grams of sodium in the total recipe, and per serving is just over 100. So we can still use some of these foods that might have a bit more sodium in them to flavor our foods, depending on how many portions we're having. Your doctor will help you determine how much sodium you should be consuming, and it's kind of based on your overall health. However, most patients are advised to consume between 1,500 and 2,300 milligrams of salt per day. And that 2,300 milligrams of salt, it's the same as 1 teaspoon. That's not too much salt, because we think about all of the sources of salt. Like if we have a glass of milk, it's going to have a little bit of salt in it. If we have a slice of bread, it could have 400 milligrams of salt in it. So being aware of reading our food labels can really help us to reduce our sodium intake. And one of those things that we can do is look for things that are ideally 5% or less per serving. And that would be about that 140 milligrams per serving. So that's why this, for example, peanut sauce that we're just about to make, it's less than 140 milligrams of sodium when we make it all together. So we know that it's a great low sodium sauce for us. So why don't we start with our peanut sauce, because we were talking a bit about those coconut aminos. So first, what we need is a 1/4 cup of peanut butter. So I'm truthfully just using Kraft peanut butter. You could use crunchy, you could use smooth, and that is why label reading is helpful. Because I think many times we think that, oh, I have to buy the really expensive, organic, just nuts. Really, they're kind of all the same. And so looking at the nutrition facts table helps us make informed decisions from a sodium, from a sugar perspective. And 1 tablespoon of the peanut butter has 2% sodium in it. In addition to our peanut butter in our peanut sauce, we are actually going to be adding the 1.5 tablespoons of coconut aminos. So, has anyone heard of coconut aminos before? Let me know, maybe in the chat or just raise your hand. I find that this is a really go ahead.
I was just commenting in the chat that I hadn't heard of them, and Jamie was suggesting that we look in the natural foods section. I was like, okay, so yeah.
That tends to be where I find it most. I just picked this one up at the superstore. So it was a little bit more expensive than like your typical Kinkemon soy sauce. It was on sale for, I think it was $8.99 or $10.99 right now. But knowing that, you know, you're typically only using a tablespoon or so at a time, it does last quite a while. We are also going to add lime juice into our sauce here. So 1.5 tablespoons of lime juice and 1.5 tablespoons of the coconut aminos. And then this one is going to have some crushed red pepper flakes in it as well. So measure with your heart. The recipe says a teaspoon. One of those things you can always increase is spice, but it's really difficult to take it away sometimes. With the herbs and spices, so we're using a mixture of dried and fresh ones this evening. And dried herbs and spices like red pepper flakes are great because they are shelf stable for quite some time. Whereas the fresh ones like the mint and basil we're doing, they obviously are in season at different times of the year and can offer some really nice fresh flavors. Personally, I loved having a big handful of the dried on my stock, things like garlic powder or parsley, dill, thyme. All of these things are really great for adding quite a lot of flavor to our food without the salt. You can get pre-packaged seasonings like Mrs. Dash or McCormick's no added salt. Those are really nice options for adding kind of a mixture of flavor without the sodium. There are some packages on the market that are like new salt or half salt. They have what's called potassium chloride in them, and they're not always recommended for everyone. So trying to look for things that say no added salt as opposed to half salt or reduced salt can be helpful. I'm going to put that peanut butter in the microwave to soften it up while we're chatting. And that can be a little trick too if you like it a little bit smoother to mix in the coconut aminos and the lime juice together. So just a couple seconds there. The next one that we're going to make is a sweet chili sauce. So in our bowl, we should also have some rice wine vinegar. So rice wine vinegar is a really great low sodium option for adding flavor, and it's used primarily in different Asian dishes. So we're going to use 1/4 cup of rice wine vinegar and then 2 tablespoons of honey. You could use maple syrup or a different type of sweetener if that's what you had available. You're just very fortunate to have access to some fresh bees. So we have some nice fresh honey. And then in this, we'll use the coconut aminos again. And then 1 clove of garlic minced, as well as 1 tablespoon of ginger minced, sorry, not mixed. And then lime juice as well. The measure with our heart for the chili flakes. Some in my household like it a little bit spicier. I, on the other hand, think I'm spicy enough. When you are buying different sauces and seasonings, the first thing I always look at is what's on the nutrition facts table, because that tells us so much information about what's in the product and allows us to make educated decisions. So this sauce is going to be a little bit more liquidy, and this is quite a lot of sauce. So you can see here why we're getting 6 servings out of it. Go. And then the last sauce that we're going to make is with the hoisin. So hoisin was the one thing here that I had on the recipe list that had a bit more sodium in it. And you can see from this recipe that 1 serving of the hoisin lime dip has 172 milligrams of sodium. So it does have a bit more than the other ones. It's probably closer to 6% of our diet. Does that mean we can't have it? No, because we know what our total budget is for sodium, and we can take a look at what else we are having at that meal or at that day. Because if we have a budget of, say, 2,300 milligrams, ideally we would want to keep each meal around 500 or 600 milligrams, and that still gives us a bit of opportunity to have some snacks during the day. We can always make our snacks a little bit lower in sodium by having things like fresh fruit or vegetables, and using things like nuts that are unsalted as a protein source. when we want to have a lower sodium snack. So we're going to mix the hoisin with 1.5 tablespoons of lime juice again. Oh, sorry, that's 4 tablespoons of lime juice. And then also with our 1.5 tablespoons of water. Before I add that water in, I'm just gonna mix this and see if I actually need it. Depends on how thick your hoisin is. All right, just let that mix mellow out for a little bit. So we should start making our rice paper rolls as well. Making a mess here. And then we can talk a little bit about things like fiber and protein. So fiber is found in many vegetables, fruit, plant-based proteins, and whole grains like carbohydrates. And it's helpful for managing our blood sugar, our cholesterol, our bowel movements. And these foods that are also high in fiber, like vegetables and fruits and plant-based proteins, they can actually help to reduce inflammation and relax our veins and arteries to help with blood pressure control. We really want to focus on getting a lot of vegetables and fruits in our diet, and ideally a variety of colors. As you could see here, we have the white and orange and green and red. And each of those different colors, including things like purple or yellow, they all have different vitamins and minerals in them. And we want to have this rainbow of colors each day so that we get enough of these vitamins and minerals into our diet. When we're preparing recipes or meals, we really want to try to aim for half of that meal to be in vegetables or fruit. That way we can get enough of a fiber throughout our day. And of course, eating a variety of these foods can also help with overall health, like managing chronic inflammation, protecting our cells, and then also making sure that we are getting enough of the right nutrients in our diet. Let's get started with our rice paper rolls. So what we are going to do is first put our rice paper in a little dish. You could use a tray, you could use a plate. My plate here is larger than my rice paper roll. And we're going to set it in here for about 20 seconds so it can get really soft and really gummy.
Emily, can you twitch your camera a little bit more towards the board? Perfect. Thank you.
Just gonna turn my kettle on for a second to warm up more water. As I've been chit-chatting, it's got a little cold. So you want this water to be a little bit warm so that you can get kind of that gummy texture. With the rice paper wraps, they often come with a little bit of a texture on them. And so we can, when we're trying to get them wet and gummy, we want to make sure that all of the kind of squares or triangles go away. When we are making these really great spring rolls, we are going to be putting in our vegetables. And one thing that's not included in the recipe is protein. And protein is really that basic building block for our human body. It's made up of different amino acids, and they play an important role in helping us build muscle, build our hair and skin and nails, and then different parts of our organs. And protein is found in things like meat, so things like chicken, for example, or shrimp, but it's often also found in vegetarian sources of protein. So things like tofu or tempeh are also great sources, and any of these could be added into our meals as low sodium options. So the chicken I'm using is just leftover from dinner. So what I like about this recipe is if you have leftover meat in the house, it can be a really great way of using it up and changing it. So we are going to place our wet rice paper wrap on a cutting board and just make it to be a little bit more round. And then the best part about this is that we get to just make it together. So you can add all of the vegetables in. So I'm going to do a little bit of lettuce. Of course, we'll do some cabbage here. Cabbage is going to add the crunch. Cabbage is also a great source of prebiotic for our gut, so that's always wonderful. And then we also have some bell peppers. And then I'll do a little bit of mint and a little bit of basil. A couple of slices of cucumber. So what we're going to do next is actually just wrap it up like a present. So I like to do the sides on the outside first, and then I like to go.
What I like about these recipes is that you can customize it to your guests if you're having people over, and they kind of make a nice interactive meal. When we're making them so that we prevent them from ripping is trying not to over soak them so that they're really just a gummy texture. And then when we're rolling them, trying to be as gentle as possible. It's okay, I ripped this one, so no one's perfect.
Yay, I don't feel so bad anymore that I always rip mine.
No one's perfect. And that's, I think, one of the nice things about nutrition is that it's not about perfection, it's about progress, right? And so if we're enjoying food and we're having fun in the kitchen, that's half the battle. If we're trying new foods, maybe you've never tried tofu before. Tofu is a great vegetarian source of protein. It has about, in a quarter of the package, it has 0 milligrams of sodium, but also has about 9 grams of protein, which is the same as an egg. We'll try to do this again with another one. One of the biggest things I hear from some of my clients and those who I work with is that when we're trying to make nutrition changes, we often strive for perfection. And that's really not the case with nutrition because we all have to start somewhere. And we want to make sure that we understand where we were and where we're getting. So if we start to, track our food, we can understand how much sodium we're having, and then we can slowly make adjustments to it because our taste buds take 2 weeks to change and to notice that food does taste good when we follow a lower sodium diet. And most of us in Canada actually consume about 3,600 milligrams of sodium. So that's 1.5 teaspoons of salt. When we think about kind of the other aspect of pulmonary hypertension management, it's fluids, right? And limiting our fluids can help to avoid swelling and prevent fluid retention in our body. So if you see your body, holding on to extra fluids in your legs or feet or ankles, that's kind of that sign of fluid retention, but you don't always see it. It can also be, shortness of breath. It could be high blood pressure. And some individuals, when they have pulmonary hypertension, they might be recommended to follow a fluid restriction. And that would be about 5 to 8 cups of fluid per day, which is about the same as 1.2 to 2 liters. So every person is different though, and it's really going to depend on what your specialist says. And just like our sodium, we can track to see how much fluid we're having. So we could write it on a piece of paper, we could get a water bottle that we might like, and kind of track our fluids that way. And fluids are considered anything that's liquid at room temperature. So that's things like ice cubes and water and coffee and juice and soup and ice cream, because that time of the year is coming soon. So all of those things count as fluids. And if we are following a fluid restriction, reducing our salt intake helps to prevent that thirst. The other thing we want to remember is trying to have smaller amounts of fluid throughout the day. That can prevent us from feeling thirsty. We can use smaller cups at meals, having frozen fruit as a snack, using chewing gum or hard sour candies. That can actually stimulate saliva production and can help to prevent dry mouth, which is often why we feel like we want to be drinking more, or maybe you brush your teeth more often. So one of the things that we really worry about from whether or not we do need a fluid restriction is taking a look at our weights, and that can often be one of those first signs if you are retaining your fluid. So your doctor may ask you to weigh yourself daily, in this example. And really, if you're gaining more than 2 pounds a day, or 5 pounds in a week, it would be really important that you speak to your healthcare provider about your fluid intake. And of course, if you are ever feeling unwell, making sure you're going to the emergency department. There's lots of great resources on the Pulmonary Hypertension Association of Canada's website for reducing sodium. There's a low sodium cookbook. There's also a tip sheet about nutrition. So if you haven't checked those out, I would also highly recommend those. And then certainly, nutrition can help. So asking your doctor to refer you to a dietitian, seeing a dietitian in clinic, those can be really great strategies if you are struggling to manage your sodium or your fluid intake. Dietitians like food. That's why most of us become dietitians. And for me, it's a really good opportunity to teach people, how we can still include some of these favorite foods, but just in smaller amounts. Looks like we got 2 fresh rolls here. I put chicken in the last one, but I want to make sure we get some questions answered too. Perfect. It's just Robin shared the low sodium cookbook. That's where this recipe came from. Wow.
A little further up, people were talking about different kinds of peanut butter. And someone suggested, I think it was Jennifer, suggested powdered peanut butter.
Peanut butter?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely an option. You could easily put it into your oatmeal or into smoothies. It can be used for that. Some people find it a little bit grainy, so it's certainly kind of personal choice. I think also whenever we think about nutrition is we also have to think about accessibility of it, right? And especially with the cost of food these days, want to make sure that we are choosing things that are, affordable within our own means. Sunflower butter, yeah, that's another great option. Sharon, I think Robin just shared the recipe again. Make another one here. If I were to kind of summarize my biggest strategy from a sodium perspective, it's reading food labels, knowing our budget. I like to think about it like a bank account, because then we never feel restricted in what we are eating. So maybe a friend invites you out for dinner, and sometimes we feel like if we're going out to a restaurant, we need to say no. We can use resources on their website to look up the nutrition information. We can speak with the waitress. We can call ahead. And all of these are great ways that we can still include some of these foods into our diet. So looks like Kim, as I continued rolling, I got a little bit better. So here's a few examples of some of our fresh rolls from this evening.
They look great.
These will stay in the fridge too.
How long will it keep for in the fridge?
So from a food safety perspective, a couple of days would be okay. Yeah.
So you've got lunch for tomorrow, set that.
Yes. Yeah. I think I'm gonna try it with the ginger dip. So give it a try here.
Yeah. Do you pour the dips over the sauces sort of over the things, or you just dip it right in,
so
or
I would
can you do it?
Pour a little bit over it.
Mm.
This one's the broken one. So just pour it right into it.
See, there was a reason why it was broken. It wanted to get sauce in it. Oh, and Beth's commenting she can keep them fresh by putting a wet paper towel on them in an airtight container. That's a great idea. Does that keep the wrapper from getting too sticky?
Yep, or wrapping them in saran wrap is another nice way.
Mm. And the saran wrap doesn't stick to the rice paper?
I don't find it does.
No. I could picture myself trying to get them apart, and they look kind of the same, and eating saran wrap. Anyway, it's probably just me. Yep.
That's a great question, Kim. So I would first speak with your healthcare team. If the dietitian is in the hospital, it would be covered by OHIP. If you do have extended benefits, dietitian services are also likely covered through that, just like if you were to go through a massage or dentist or something like that. Oh yeah, Beth is saying don't let them touch in the container. Yeah, you can see I have them
Mm.
pretty spaced out on the plate. Yeah, in the recipe, it's not my recipe for the roll, so they had it in a large pan. I don't have that much counter space for that tonight.
Everybody's being very quiet tonight. I think everybody wants to go and eat their dinner now that they've made it. Any final comments or questions for anybody before we let Emily go and eat her dinner too?
I just want to say thanks for making them. Those dip sauces sound really good. I tend to struggle with that part.
I'm gonna put my peanut butter one in the microwave before I eat it, but
I have a question. So it's very hard to know what to eat when you have pulmonary hypertension because you have the low sodium, and then I have also have type 2 diabetes and hypertension. So I'm like, since I've been diagnosed with pH, I've been struggling. And I find like I try to eat lots of vegetables, lots of fruit, like lots of fruits, vegetables, and things like that, and that's protein. But I just don't find it. I'm filled.
yeah,
Like
one of the biggest things that can help keep us full is that fiber piece. So making sure, majority of our meal is in that vegetables, and then thinking about having the carbohydrate as well, because that's often something that keeps us, satiated or full. And even with diabetes, we can have carbohydrates. It's really just about how much and which ones. So trying to choose more of those whole grains can help to control the blood sugars. But fortunately, whenever we think about what we want to be eating for our diabetes, it's really the same as pH, because we're focusing on those, whole foods, lots of colorful foods, and low sodium, which we would be doing for our blood sugars as well. Because when we have diabetes, we want to also be protecting our heart too. Good luck, Jamie.
Yes. Any more questions? I think we may be coming to the end. So I'm going to say a huge thank you to Emily for showing us such a nutritious and delicious dinner. I'm gonna go. I'm starving now. I want to go and make my own in my own kitchen. So I think I'll stop the recording here. Thank you everyone for coming, and I hope you have a great dinner and a great day.